Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go to screen share and start a presentation here about the IRA. Rebecca, are you able to see the slides? Is the screen share working?
Not quite yet.
Okay. Let me know if it comes through.
Sure, of course.
Be back up. Try again.
There we go.
All right. There. So the topic of this webinar today is essentially the Inflation Reduction Act and how you might be able to make use of it in the school that you represent can do that. I'm John Morrison. I'm the executive director of NC Clean Future, which is a program that's a joint venture of the Centers for the Environment at Catawba College and Wake Forest University. And the mission of NC Clean Future is to really help North Carolina make the transition to a clean economy in a way that benefits all. One of the initiatives, in this program, we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary. One of the initial initiatives of NC Clean Future is to partner with NCICU to create a sustainability group and then help with some of that programming. Some of you, I know, were at the inaugural meeting in December over at Salem College, and that group will be meeting again under the guise of NCICU. But in the interim, wanted to pull together some information about the Inflation Reduction Act and what it might mean and the benefits that it might provide for your schools. And that's what this webinar is about. I hope that you have some familiarity with it, but as many of you probably are aware, the Inflation Reduction Act is rather complex and there's a whole lot there. So what I'm hoping to be able to do is provide some focus here and help you avoid spending the hours and hours of time trying to dig through all that's there. But a brief introduction of the Inflation Reduction Act. It was passed in 1922, so it's a year and a half, 2 years old, and is really a plan to reduce, as you see there, basic carbon pollution. And it does it in a way that makes it possible for everyone to participate, particularly for nonprofits. And that's why I think this is important, because there have been some real changes around tax credits that I'll talk more about in a minute, excuse me, that really are beneficial for independent schools. And there's a lot of funding that's available for that. It's very broad, involves a plethora of agencies. Some of them are listed here, and we'll talk about most of them in this webinar. But what I want to do through NC Clean Future is sort of sort through what's available, what's out there, and really identify the ones that make most sense. There are others, and I'll provide some links to further information if you want to broaden beyond what I'm focusing on here. But I hope to be able to help you understand how things work and the timing of many things. Not all of them are yet available. The tax credits are, but there are other programs that haven't quite hit the street yet, but sort of let you know when you might expect those. And then talk about some sorts of projects that really would make sense on a college campus. And what are we talking about here? What sort of projects are those? They're projects, they're around energy, clean energy, but projects to save energy, so efficiency activities, clean energy systems, like the solar array you see here on the roof. This is a shot from Catawba College, as well as electric vehicles. That there's some incentives in the IRA for that. So really, that's what we're talking about here, is mostly energy, a little bit of transportation sorts of things. And why bother? Why we want to do it? There's lots of motivations. The ones I've listed here are ones that are relevant certainly to what we're doing at Catawba College and how we intend to use and why we intend to use the IRA. Doing energy efficiency upgrades to buildings that also provide for comfort and better health. Obviously saving money, as we can be more efficient and and the like. To be more resilient and self-sufficient, the school has, backup generators. I'm sure most of your schools do as well. But the notion that adding another layer of self-generation that's not fuel dependent or not dependent on the delivery of fuel, that provides a further level of resiliency in the case of prolonged outage and fuel shortages and the like. And then, of course, the impact on clean air, clean water, and should add here, climate change and the like. And also part of the educational mission of the institution in terms of educating the next generation of Americans. And so for all of these reasons, and many of those, I hope, sort of resonate and correspond to why you might want to do this as well. But all these are the benefits that we see in doing the sorts of projects that we'll be talking about. Now, what's available from the IRA? There are tax credits, and I want to stress, yes, even for nonprofits, most of the schools represented here do not typically pay taxes to the IRS, but the significant change, and I'll talk more about it, in the IRA is it makes tax credits that used to be available only to organizations with a tax liability, makes them available to the nonprofits. There are loan programs, there are grants, and there are rebates that will be coming as well. And so I'll touch on all of those. The first two, the tax credits and the loans, are the ones that I think are really the big benefit here. And so I'll be talking most about those. And just I'll refer to this project later on in the presentation. This is a shot of a geothermal well field that Catawba put in front of the library there on the left and the chapel in the right. I'm pleased to say we finished it about the wells about a month ago. The upgrades in the library are still going on. And that area has now been returned to a nice lush green lawn. So when graduation comes and the graduates walk across to the chapel, they won't see any of the mud and mess that we had for about 6 weeks on campus. Now, what are the tax credits and deductions available? It's a long, long list, as you can see here. We are not going to cover all of them. The ones on the left are the ones that we'll be talking about, the ones that I think make most sense for us. There are others, and I want you to be aware that they exist. And if you want to pursue those or look further into them, feel free. But by my assessment, they're not as relevant to the operations that we typically have on campuses in North Carolina. So we'll focus on the ones on the left. And there are two types of tax credits to be aware of. One is what's called elective pay or direct pay. And this is the real big change. These are tax credits that have been around for a long, long time, but you used to have to be have a tax liability in order to make use of the tax credit. Now you don't do that. You can, as it's shown here, you complete a project, you pre-register the IRS. There's a process and forms that you need to fill out to get a project ID, and then you file a tax return at the end of your tax and fiscal year, whenever that is, and then wait for a payment. Wait for the check to come from the IRS. This is all relatively new. The final rules were just issued a little more than 6 weeks ago, but it really makes it's a real sea change in terms of how nonprofits can avail themselves of these tax credits. I don't know if any of you did some solar projects or other things that were tax credit eligible prior to this. Catawba did back in 2015, and we have put solar on roofs of many buildings, and we had to create a special purpose entity, i.e. that would have tax liability and bring in outside investors, and it existed, and we just only recently unwound all of that, having monetized the tax credits. And so it was rather complex. This is a much more straightforward process, though I hesitate to say that. Anytime you're dealing with the IRS, there's a lot of detail to be addressed. And let me stop right now and be clear. I am not an accountant, and I am not providing tax advice. And so if you're engaging in a program and want to do this, I really strongly recommend that you contract and connect with competent tax advisory services. I presume most of your schools have an accounting firm that does audits and things of that sort. If they don't feel competent, certainly they can recommend some. And I'd be happy to recommend some that I've worked with as well, but please do not take what I say as hard and fast advice on that regard. The second sort of tax credit is really a tax deduction. And because it's a tax deduction, it means you do have to have tax liability. Therefore, it's not available to the school or nonprofit, but it is transferable. So it can be available to the contractor or designer doing the project. And so the way this one works is that you assign the deduction to the design firm or contractor. And so the contractor would qualify for that, take it when they file their taxes, and that would lower the overall price, the cost to them, and hopefully then the price of the project to you. It's a bit more complicated, and I'll say a little bit more about this. Then it's more complicated than the elective pay tax credits. But looking at the elective pay and what sorts of projects might you consider? The ones that rise to the top are, if you're interested in installing solar energy systems on campus, geothermal heat pumps like that well field I showed you a picture of, and battery energy storage systems. There are other investments as well, but these are the ones that I think if you're operating a campus and facilities on campus make sense. That tax credit is 30% of the project cost. And then there's 3 different adders that could get you up to as much as 60% of the project cost. So this is a big, big deal. It really reduces the upfront cost of doing any of these projects. The one adder is made in America, and whoever your contractor is, if you're working with, if you're doing a solar array installation, the installer will be able to help you understand whether they're procuring material that meets the Made in America criteria. The other 2 are place-based, so it really depends on where you're located. One is for low-income communities, if your school is located in a low-income community, or in what they call an energy community. And various national labs have created interactive maps that make it very easy to find this. And actually, I should also, let me stop for a minute. I should have said this at the outset. This presentation will be available to you. We'll distribute it to you. And it has links to all this. So please don't feel like you need to scribble lots of notes and the like. You'll have this, and it has the links to what I'm talking about here. But this is a screenshot that I took of the low-income communities. As you can see, it covers most of rural North Carolina and some urban areas there in purple. And it is interactive. So if you go to the link that is in this presentation, you can drill down to the exact location of your school and determine whether you're in a low-income community or not. The same holds true for the map of energy communities. Energy communities are those census tracts that have been significantly impacted by the transition. And so that's places where coal mining has really slowed down, or coal facilities have been shuttered. Here in North Carolina, that really is the latter, the coal facilities. And what you see here, these are all the locations where Duke Energy has recently, in the last 3 to 5 years or so, closed coal plants, coal generating facilities. So it's the census tract and then the ones surrounding it. And again, you can drill down on this interactive map and determine whether you're in one of those or not. I did that for Catawba because you see over there south of Winston-Salem is a blob that, and we are just outside of it. It was the Buck steam plant there on the Yadkin River that runs by Salisbury. But we don't come quite close enough to qualify. Another tax credit that I think schools should be looking at and thinking about is the electric vehicle. So if you want to electrify the fleets, vehicles that you're using on campus, there's an opportunity to get tax credits for that. The big one is the $7,500 for electric car or light truck. It needs to qualify as meeting certain Made in America criteria there. And as of the beginning of this year, the credit is available directly from the car dealer. It used to be, last year you had to buy the vehicle and then submit the paperwork to the IRS. That the car dealers in most cases will do that for you directly. When you purchase the car, you sign off at the dealer and they file the necessary paperwork. I will caution you, we did that, and the way the dealer presents it as a rebate, they sort of want to take credit for it, but when they say rebate, what they're really doing is just this tax credit that's coming through. There is also a tax credit for heavy duty vehicles like a bus and the like, if your school owns and operates buses. There is also one for used EVs. This one, though, everything I've seen, and I hope I'm wrong, but everything I've seen is that this is only available to individuals and not to the schools or institutions and organizations. I should have more for you on this. Hopefully in the next several months. Catawba actually bought a used EV as a patrol vehicle for our public safety folks. And so we're working with our accountant to really clarify this. But as I said, everything I've seen to date says this is just for individuals, but I think it's the case. So stay tuned. Hopefully we might get a different answer there as we really drill into this. There's also a tax credit for EV charger installation, and it's a big one, as you can see there, up to $100,000. This, however, is only available in low-income areas and rural areas. And again, there's a link to the map, a map, and again, it's interactive, so you can drill down. And this is a screenshot of that area, so you can look and see if you would qualify for that. And again, just using Catawba's experience. The inside the city limits where the school is located does not qualify. Out in the county, it does. So we're close, but we don't qualify. Didn't stop us from installing a public EV charger, but we weren't able to use the tax credit. Those are the tax credits that fall under the elective pay or direct pay tax credit. The next one here on building energy efficiency is the tax deduction I made reference to earlier. It's sometimes referred to as the 179D tax credit or deduction, because that's the tax portion of the tax code. And it's for building energy efficiency specifically, lighting, your heating and air conditioning equipment, improving insulation of the building shell or envelope, improving water heating and the like. And it's calculated based on the amount of improvement and the size of the building. And so if you have to get a minimum of 25% improvement, and then you qualify for 50 cents per square foot deduction. You can get up to $1 if you get all the way up to 50% improvement. And there is the bottom bullet there on the right. There is a credit for meeting certain wage and apprenticeship requirements. The contractors and folks that I've talked to have basically said this isn't worth it because the cost of meeting those wage and apprenticeship requirements is greater than the tax credit. And so it's certainly worthwhile asking the contractor or designer that you're working with, because 5X is a pretty big amount. But as I said, what we've heard from the folks that we're working with is economically, financially, it doesn't really make sense. I want to stress again, it's a transferable tax deduction. It's needs to be allocated. So as the building owner, you need to, in essence, sign it over or allocate it to the designer or contractor who would then monetize it through their tax filing. It obviously reduces their costs. As you negotiate the contract with the designer, that needs to be part of the negotiation in terms of how is this tax credit going to be dealt with. I can guess that it wouldn't be 100% because the contractor does need to jump through some hoops and incur some costs to do this, but certainly a majority of that value should come back to the school as the building owner. It does require a third-party modeling of the energy improvement. And it's an independent party to do that. So there's some costs involved there. And because of these requirements of working through the contractor, the modeling and the like, and the greater complexity, this really makes sense on bigger projects. Not so much if you're just doing a simple change out, or the like. I don't have a dollar amount, and you probably would want to look at that as you talk to contractors. I know that at Catawba, we're planning a residence hall gut rehab and upgrade And so we will be using it on that. The ground source heat pump project that we did on the library is large enough to warrant using this. So it's worthwhile. It just probably makes sense on larger projects, not smaller ones that you may be considering on campus. That finishes the tax credits. So, as indicated, some clean energy, some vehicles, some energy efficiency sorts of things. The tax credits alone aren't going to pay for this. And I imagine your school is like Catawba. There's not a lot of money laying around, and there's a lot of demands for, resources at the school. But one thing to think about is to use low interest loans that are available from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund of the EPA, specifically the National Clean Investment Fund, that is $14 billion, I think, that will be going out to financial institutions to provide low interest loans for activities, projects and the like that reduce greenhouse gases. And so anything around, improving the energy supply and usage, so energy efficiency, clean energy, green energy projects will supply. The funds that EPA is allocating de-risk the loans so that the financial institutions can basically lower the interest rate and offer better terms. So it's relatively low cost capital. Just a couple of weeks ago, EPA announced the 3 organizations that are going to be administering the National Clean Investment Fund. And that link there, if you want to learn more about those organizations, is there. One of them is a consortia that includes Self-Help Credit Union, which is headquartered in Durham. And so I've been in conversation with them and have some other meetings coming up with them to understand what's going to happen and where things are going to go. Basically, those 3 organizations will administer. EPA gives the money to them to administer. They then will develop networks of lending agencies, and those will typically be community development finance institutions and green banks. An example of a green bank is the North Carolina Clean Energy Fund. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's a nonprofit that was started up specifically to do this, and so they haven't received it, but there's likely a good chance that they will have funding and be able to do loans using the National Clean Investment Fund. Right now, the EPA announced the administrators just a few weeks ago. They're in negotiations to get their final contracts, finalized and signed and everything else. And so that will take them at least through June of this summer. So those organizations, the 3 administrating organizations, won't be ready to sort of launch it until summer of 2024. So this is one of those cases of stay tuned. And I will be watching this very, very closely, and as things develop, certainly get word out to everyone so that we can understand what the timeline is and when these loans might be available, and which institutions and organizations, banks, financial institutions you might want to approach if you're looking at doing this sort of thing. There is another source of low interest loans that is already out on the street or available, though it's rather constrained. It's from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, their Rural Energy Savings Program. They lend money to co-ops, which in turn lend it to their customers and members. And it's low interest, not to exceed 5%. Here in North Carolina, Roanoke Co-op is the only co-op that is using these funds from the USDA. And I don't know if there are any schools that are in the Roanoke Co-op territory. So if you are, drop me a note and let me know. And I'll be happy to put you in touch with the folks at Roanoke. They're doing some very innovative sorts of things with this program and others. So if your utility bill comes from Roanoke, let me know, and I'll be happy to put you in touch with them. That finishes the loans, and as I said, it's sort of a stay tuned or coming attractions sort of thing, and I'll keep you informed as to what's coming. Moving on now to grants, and there is one grant program that makes sense, I think, which is for building energy efficiency through DOE, and it's for things like some of the other things we were talking about, lighting, HVAC, improving the building envelope, insulation like water heating. It's a grant. It's in essence, here's, $120,000 up to $120,000. They're regional organizations, and I'll highlight those in a minute, that have been selected to do that. The grant rules require a 1-to-1 cost match, but that match doesn't necessarily have to be cash. You could do it as in kind. If you have a facilities team that's doing some weather stripping or other upgrades, document that. That would qualify. Utility rebates, which I'll talk about in a minute, would qualify for some of that match, or of course cash, or if you're taking out a loan doing that. This program is capped. There's a limited amount of federal funding. Unlike the tax credits, basically, if you qualify, you get it. You just have to meet the requirements of the project that you're doing and fill out the necessary forms and the like, and you'll get that tax credit. Here, you have to apply, and you're in competition with other folks that are applying. And the amount of money, I don't remember the amount, but across the whole U.S., the estimate is they'll be able to do about 300 buildings. And so it's not a lot of money, and as a result, it's going to be pretty competitive. And these are the organizations that are administering the funds across the state. Here in the Southeast, the light blue, that's South Base Energy Institute out of Atlanta, Georgia, will be administering the program. And so if you're interested in it, the name of the program is called Renewing America's Nonprofits. And if you have a federal program, you have to have a 3-letter acronym. So it goes by RAN. South Base there is the administrator. And one of the nice things about this is that it includes technical assistance. And so the way South Face has packaged their program is they will come in, if you're one of the selected organizations, and really help you dive in and understand what you're going to be doing in energy audit. The estimate when I talk to them is that they expect to do about 30 grants in that 9-state region. So again, it's really competitive. And so really only makes sense if you have a project that you're, pretty clear on what you're going to be doing. It'll be sort of a real showcase sort of project. There's hope that this will be successful. The RAND program will be successful, and DOE will put more money into it. But for this first round, and what South Base is going to be doing, they're going to be doing 3 rounds of opening it up for application. And I believe the first round's already open. The last round will be towards the end of this year. So yeah, you really kind of have to have a project that you're confident you're going to be doing and headed down that path. Let me back up. An example is, and Catawba is going to attempt to, is going to make application. We'll see if we're successful. We're doing a residence hall renovation that's going to kick off in 2025. And so we're hoping in the last round of applications that we will have pulled together all the information that's needed and go after the grant and the assistance they can provide. But I wanted you to be aware of it. You'll probably hear about it. It's limited in its real availability. But if you've got something going, I'll be happy to put you in touch. Let me know. I'll be happy to put you in touch with the folks in Atlanta at South Base. They're really quite helpful. They know they've been doing this with philanthropic money for years, and so they're quite good at it. The last thing I want to talk about is rebates. There's DOE, Department of Energy funds that will be administered by the state energy offices. Those monies haven't really come forward yet, haven't been forwarded to the states, and the state energy office has not yet defined the program. So this is another one of those, stay tuned, and to see what comes. I know that 14 years ago, when we had similar funds that came through during what was the Obama, they called it our American Rescue and Recovery Act, I think was the law. We created, the state energy office, we created an appliance rebate program that we worked through retailers. And so if you were looking at, wanting to buy refrigerators, dryers, things of that sort, energy intensive appliances, that you could qualify for that. So that's another one. Stay tuned. I'll be keeping tabs on it and talking to the state energy office and and trying to understand what will be available when it might be coming. There is another set of rebates that is unrelated to the Inflation Reduction Act, which are available, which are from the utilities. And this obviously depends on who your utility provider is. And so I would suggest, to talk to, if you're a Duke Energy customer, call the customer rep. If you're in a municipal utility or being served by a co-op, get in touch with them and find out what rebates they may have. I've looked at the ones from Duke. They're not huge rebates. I think the tax credits and the loans are the bigger deal. But it's in essence free money, so it's in most cases worthwhile going after it. One of the other things Duke will do is they will do a walkthrough, an energy assessment. I wouldn't call it an audit. It's not really detailed, but in terms of real simple, low-hanging fruit sorts of measures, lighting change outs, upgrading thermostats, HVAC controls. They have some assistance there, and they have contractors that will come in and walk through your buildings and provide you some guidance and payback information and the like. So if you're moving on some energy efficiency sorts of things, a good place to start is with your utility provider. Those are all the programs. I want to talk about how you might use them, because one of the things that you can do with these is you're not limited to just one. They're not, and in many cases they're not exclusive. They can be additive, and so you can stack these programs. And I've listed 2 examples there. If you want to do a building efficiency program, you can hopefully, once we get the details, you'll be able to get a low interest loan. You can use utility rebates. If it's a large enough project, go after the building efficiency tax credit and the Renewing America's Nonprofit grant. You can use all of those sources to put together a stack of financial resources to accomplish the project. In a similar way, if you want to put solar on campus, the clean energy tax credit, minimum 30%, in all likelihood 40% with a Made in America, and then if you qualify in the location, as much as 60% of that. And then using loans, and there are 2 sorts of loans. One is that the IRS isn't going to send you a check immediately, and of course you do have to pay your contractor before you actually file. You have to complete the project before you file for the tax return. So there's a period of 4 to 18 months where your school has put out the money and you're waiting for the IRS to send you the check. And so as I've talked to the folks at both Self-Help Credit Union and North Carolina Clean Energy Fund, they're very aware of this. And the notion of doing a bridge loan, short-term loan of 18 months in term is very much on their radar screen, and in all likelihood be one of the products they offer. I haven't gotten as much clarity on the longer-term loan, but they're looking at the notion that if you do energy efficiency or you put in a clean energy solar array, you're reducing your utility expenditures, and hopefully what we'll see are loan terms and interest rates and duration of the loans such that the utility savings will pay for the financing for the project. Will repay the loan so that your school can be cash flow positive from day one. That's sort of what we're looking at. So as we learn more about the loans, we'll be able to do that. But I'm reasonably optimistic that that's what we're going to be able to do with this, is to go in and do projects with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, EPA loans, do it in a way that you're cash flow positive from day one, and don't have to go out and find a donor or tap other resources, from what I know are always tight budgets on campus. So that's what I think is exciting about the IRA, is the notion between things like the tax credits and these loan funds, that we can do projects in a way that are financially feasible. In terms of next steps, this is a real sort of drink from a fire hose, real broad introduction and not real depth. But we're working on putting a workshop together this summer, be in person. We haven't selected a date yet. Rebecca and I we're working on that. But we'll be bringing in some folks who are very knowledgeable on this to talk about the elective pay tax credits. Bring in an accounting firm, say this is how you walk it through and what you need to do in the form. It's a 990T form that needs to be filled out, and get into that sort of detail. Have an engineering design firm that will talk about how they've worked with schools and other nonprofits on the 179D tax deduction and how that process works. By the summer, we should know more, and so have somebody in who's involved in that to talk about what the loan's going to look like. South Face has been here. For those of you that were at the December meeting, we had a representative there, and we probably can have them back to speak about their grant program. And then I've already spoken to someone at Duke to come in and just talk to us about the rebates. So the idea would be that this summer, probably, well, hopefully in the June, July timeframe, that we'll have some folks in a much more detailed dive into the IRA. And as such, be thinking about who from your campus ought to be included. Obviously, folks who are leading the sustainability charge on campus, facilities directors, since a lot of what we're talking about is buildings and heating and cooling systems and the like, and certainly somebody from your finance office. You know, what the IRA ultimately is about is funds to be able to do projects. And of course, presumably the finance office are the people that would be dealing with the IRS and the tax credits and the like. And so helping them get comfortable with this, or at least get familiar and know that it's coming, will be important. There's a number of links and resources I've added, and when you get this PowerPoint that I've pulled together some stuff, if you want to dive deeper into some of these things and see some other information there, you can see some resource guides and fact sheets, the links to those tax credit maps that I showed you screenshots of before. There's some IRS websites. And as we go forward, I hope to be able to fill in and get more information on the loan. And with that, take a deep breath, say that's a lot in a short period of time, but I'll be happy to answer any questions. So I'll stop sharing here.
So John, there is a question or two in the chat.
Okay, yeah, we just got that open. So okay.
Right. So you see Matt and Bill's questions. Well,
yeah, the first question is about a look back period for projects completed. The answer is yes, but you have to. It all depends on the tax year in which the project was completed, and because that's the year that you can claim it in. So if let's assume for purposes that your tax year is the same as the calendar year. So if you completed a project in 2023, you can go through the process of registering the IRS and then filing for that. If you did it in 2022, you've already lost that tax year. So there's a limited look back in that regard. That being said, as you're looking at projects and moving forward, you do really want to pay attention to when your tax year is. I'll use Catawba as an example again. Our tax year actually ends May 31st. And so we've got a number of projects that we have got to get registered with the IRS before the tax year ends. And so that when we do the tax filing, typically 45 days or so after the end of the tax year, we'll do it. Actually, I see Marcus on the call. He'll be able to, who's our CFO, he'll be able to tell us when we're going to do the tax filing. But basically, we got to get registered in this tax year so that when we do the tax filing for this tax year, we can do it. So you can look back to 2023. The second question was recording. The answer is yes. Rebecca's got this, and we will send you a copy of the slides. Rebecca has that, so we can send it out. And the next one from Bill Durham, we have several buildings we're process of finishing up complete renovation. We completed in about 2 months. For the tax credits, it's all about when is the project finished and put into place. And so if you're going to finish it up in 2 months' time, and again, we'll operate from the presumption that your tax year is the calendar year. That means you, before December, if you finish it in this tax year before December, you need to file or register, with the IRS so that when you file in the first quarter of 2025. Make sure I get my year right. 2025. You've got that registration number that you'll put in. So yes, the answer is if you're working on buildings now, you can avail yourself of the tax credit. Be happy to entertain any other questions. We can do that live if you want to come.
I have one, John.
Sure.
So this has been very helpful. Thank you. So much to navigate. But
it is.
well, and that's kind of my point. I think for us at least, and probably not for Catawba, because y'all have been doing this kind of work for a while. This whole IRA opening represents a new frontier in thinking about needing to think about, outside accounting and grants and the sort of integration of accounting with facilities. We've just, I guess we've funded things more through fundraising in the past, which is pretty straightforward, and through capital budget and stuff like that. So especially for us small schools, I know you said like some of the key players who need to be in the room, but are you seeing this as like truly more of a team-based approach to communicating all these details of like project, when it needs to be completed, and aligning that with the tax considerations and analysis?
Absolutely, because a lot of the upgrades and the like are dealt with over in the facilities side, but presumably at your school, it's the finance folks who are going to be filing the work, the paperwork and the like, and so they need to be very much involved in it. And again, it depends on how your school is organized. I know in many schools, the facilities actually reports up through finance, the CFO. And so that linkage may exist there already. But it's also a case of, the folks in the finance office and the folks in facilities, they're busy. They got full-time jobs. And so what we found is that myself and my colleagues at the Center for the Environment, we spend a lot of time, I don't want to say haranguing, but reminding our colleagues on campus, hey, there's these opportunities, and offering our assistance in that regard, in terms of doing some of the legwork here to find out this stuff. Marcus Buckley, who's our interim CFO, is on the call here. And, a couple of weeks ago, he said, why don't you guys, talking to me and one of my colleagues, why don't you talk directly to the accounting firm and get this nailed down? It doesn't. And so we're happy to step in and do that. So you may find it necessary just because people have limited bandwidth. And if you want to do these sorts of sustainability and energy efficiency things, it does take time, and you need to figure out where that time is going to come from.
Yeah. Yes. And the irony is, by title, the grants office, you would think, they have such experience in this sort of work, but it's really around academic projects and research.
Right. Yes.
So anyway, two more quick questions. So we've had the question just internally, do you see anything about a conflict of interest using our own accounting firm for these purposes that does our audits?
No, I don't. That's the direction we're going.
Yeah. Okay.
As long as they're knowledgeable about it. Marcus, do you want to chime in there?
Yes, I do. Our audit firm is Sherry Beckert, and they are very knowledgeable about all of these programs. And just to correct John slightly, he does not harangue us. We view him as a very important partner and part of the college's mission, but there should be no conflict of interest there. If you have, again, I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, ask them, but I dare say that you will find that there's no conflict.
And then the only other thing, John, is I know that in addition to the federal dollars that you've helped us understand today that are sometimes flowing through state structures, there are also designated state funds for some of these same kinds of projects. So have you all found that those to be worth the time to kind of explore and apply for as well? Or do you think IRA is really the focus just because of the scale of it?
Most of those are typically formula grants, and they usually flow through the state energy office, though I imagine there's some that are going to DOT, for some of the vehicle electrification. sorts of things. And then of course there's USDA, for specific rural programs, but the ones around energy tend to go through the state energy office. Right now, they have a lot of that money is around low income weatherization, and they've got their hands full. They're really focusing on that. There's not so much through the state energy office that really applies to institutions and commercial customers. There is some funding, though it actually tends to come through DEQ more than this, which the state energy office is part of DEQ, around providing some energy audit and the likes. But I'm not aware of any scaling up of those funds. I mentioned the appliance rebates that will be coming. I don't know the timing on those yet. Those are intended primarily for individuals, though my guess is that, if you're buying an energy intensive appliance like a refrigerator or a dryer or something, maybe in, a small air conditioning system or something, that you could qualify for that as well. I do know for the individuals, those are going to be income based. And so as your income rises, you qualify for less than tax rate. I don't know, there haven't been any rules yet about how it applies to institutions, nonprofits, and the like. So that's one of those areas where stay tuned. I'll be talking to the folks at the state energy office and trying to understand what's happening and when it might be happening.
John,
Any
I have
other
a question about the next step, and that's the meeting that we're hoping to have later in the summer. Have you thought through whether that would be an in-person, virtual, or what are you thinking?
I'm thinking it would be in person, and
Okay.
Catawba would be happy to host it. We're, I think, reasonably centrally located in the state, such that people could come in. I'm thinking it'll probably be something on the order of about 6 hours, so that you could drive in the morning, attend, ask lots of questions, and then drive home at the end of the day.
Super. We'll work together.
All right, I
on
see
that.
Patrick's comment. Would love an in-person meeting. Yeah, Patrick, I couldn't agree more. That I always find it so much beneficial to just Zoom works okay, but you can't beat being in the room, interacting, and the like. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
I do want to make a real appeal here for our next Champions and Directors of Sustainability meeting, which will this year be in December at High Point University, and it will be on December 17th. You haven't gotten to save the date yet, but you will. So just stay tuned. Please mark your calendars. And we welcome not only our champions of sustainability, but any of you who feel that it would be beneficial to be at this particular meeting. And again, High Point University. So put that on your calendars. We'd love to see you.
And for those that were not able to attend the December meeting, the Directors of Sustainability Champions, it covers a much broader one. We've just focused on energy, clean energy, the IRA here for this webinar. But the sustainability group is much, much broader topics in terms of sustainability across the campus, not only in terms of campus operations, but how does sustainability work into the curriculum, and how do faculty and students, participate. So it's about a comprehensive, what are we saying and doing on and teaching on our campuses around sustainability. So yeah, it was a fascinating meeting, and we barely scratched the surface at our first meeting. So much more to come there. Well, with that, I'm finished. And let me just say, if you have other questions, my email is on one of the opening slides of the presentation. Feel free to drop me a note. I'll be happy to respond. And just those of you who are not aware, I spent most of my career in the clean energy industry, and so doing projects of the sorts that we're talking about is stuff I've done a lot of, and I'm more than happy to share what I know there. So if you have some questions and the like, or thinking about certain things and considering directions to go, that makes my day when I can answer those sorts of questions. So please don't hesitate to ask them.
And same here, John. We are so grateful for all the expertise and insights that you have shared today, as well as throughout this whole process. We're delighted to get to work with you and Catawba and all of our campuses. And if questions arise that you want to forward to me at NCICU, I think most of you have gotten 100 emails from me at least. So, but if you need my email address, I've posted in the chat.
And I guess the last thing is, are there other folks on campus that need to be on Rebecca's distribution list?
Right.
I just know yesterday, Mark, I'm glad to see you here on the call. I was at a conference and ran into Mark and said, "Hey, are you getting these emails?" And the answer was no. So, and Mark, correct me if I understand yesterday that you have been recently named to be the sustainability champion for Johnson C. Smith.
Yes, sir. Good morning, John. It was good to see you. And our provost just did announce that for me to take the role of chief sustainability officer for campus, so we can do exactly what we're talking about here in this meeting. So very enthusiastic. And then we have some of our financial officers here, as well as our operations VP. They're in the meeting
good.
too. So.
Well, congratulations
to the
on
future.
your new role there at Johnson C. Smith.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And with that, I'm done. Let me wish everyone a wonderful weekend, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thanks so
Take
much,
care.
John. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.